The halfway stage of the Amgen Tour of California and the longest of the week at 135 miles or 217 kilometers. It would follow the Pacific Highway, some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. The riders leaving here from Morro Bay, bound for the racetrack at Laguna, just on the outskirts of Monterey.
Looking very happy in his yellow jersey, and Julian Alaphilippe wasn't concerned about a 7-man breakaway that formed very early on. They built a lead of 4.5 minutes, and maybe a shock to many was the presence of Mark Cavendish, the sprinter, in the breakaway group.
The peloton enjoying a look across the Pacific Ocean as they crossed here the Bixby Bridge, were holding the riders in check. They knew at the end of the day there were two very sharp hills, but first of all they had to catch up with the breakaway.
But it was big pressure. The breakaway had 4.5 minutes. As they started to get down to the final few kilometres, the race was on. One of the pre-race favourites, Lachlan Morton, went down very hard at the wrong part of the race just before the start of the penultimate climb.
Yes, about 6 miles to go on the Laurelus grade. Morton had crashed and lost all chance of retaining his high overall position. The breakaway up front being led by the blue jerseyed Greg Daniel, the youngster on the Action team. He was trying to split away from the breakaway. Cavendish was dropped and picked up by what was left of the chasing peloton. And as they were going up the Laurelus grade, only one rider was setting the pace, Daniel.
Yes, and he had a 30-second advantage, and he pressed on to the top of the climb, facing up to a 60-mile-an-hour descent onto the motor racing circuit at Laguna Seca, the motor racing circuit, the Mazda circuit just outside of Monterey Bay.
He made the horseshoe switch back there onto the circuit. Then he would face a 16% climb, and that was to prove one hill too far. What was left of the peloton, about 20 of them, that was all, picked him up. Then came a series of attacks. The first one by Guerrero, the teammate of Daniel, who was still trying to finish it off for the young Action team.
Yes, but Nilsson Paulus just struggling to stay on the back. The youngest rider in the race kept himself in contact and well up in the overall standings, but it was really about the battle for the stage victory. And Nathan Haas had his legs on fire, but he was pulled back into the fold inside of the last 500 meters.
It seemed everyone who had survived this last 6 miles of the race all felt they could win it, as attack after counter-attack was made through the corkscrew on the famous motor race circuit, as the riders now lined up for the finish at 1 kilometre out. At the front appeared Peter Sagan in his green points leaders jersey.
Queuing up behind him, though, in the black and red jerseys of BMC Racing, Sammy Sanchez, the Olympic champion, was trying to get a victory for his man, Craig van Avermaet, but it was chaos behind as everybody scrambled to stay in the slipstream of the riders in front of them.
Julian Alaphilippe in the yellow jersey, he'd got a 3-second time bonus very early on, was finishing with the group, but he was scrabbling at the back as the sprint began by Nathan Haas. Haas looked very strong, but sitting in his slipstream, Peter Sagan, and then on the left shoulder, as we look here, came Greg van Avermaet. But on the line, Sagan won his second stage out of 4 possibilities and has now pushed his win tally historically to 15 stage victories in this event.
But after a cut and thrust fight to the line, there was no real change in the overall standings as Peter Sagan enjoyed the victory of the stage. Behind, most of the contenders were pretty much together.
Yes, 10 riders will cross the line, all given at the same time. And the first to congratulating Sagan was Julian Alaphilippe, who confirmed his overall lead in this race with 4 days to ride. The world champion on top in Monterey. Greg van Avermaet, back from a serious injury, was there in second place, while the Australian Nathan Haas of Dimension Data in third. Brent Bookwalter just narrowly missing out on a time bonus, and that could have been important for him. Nilsson Paulus has kept his high overall position. He yo-yoed a bit towards the end, but finally finished 5th and held on to 6th overall. Increasing his lead in the Visit California points competition, Peter Sagan all smiles. He just loves it when he's winning, and he loves being in the United States. The point standing for him now is the only clear leader of any of the competitions, 38 against Ben King's 21. Alaphilippe still a threat there in third place, And further down, Paulus is there in 10th with 11 points scored. What a day this man had. He picked up a 3-second time bonus, finished in the same time as the other 9 riders alongside him. He's actually increased his overall lead tonight by 3 seconds.
Julian Alaphilippe just crossing off one more day, and his extension is 22 seconds now over Peter Stettner in second place and 37 seconds back to the Kiwi George Bennett.
Buckwalter in 4th place. It would have been slightly different had he just snicked a time bonus, but tomorrow it's another long stage as we go to South Lake Tahoe.